reborn on the very night Liang Jian and Zhao Lingyi planned their elopement. As his betrothed, I gave him travel money. With gratitude toward me in his heart, he and she slipped out of the city under cover of night. What awaited them thereafter was a life of roughing it, sleeping under the stars, and utter destitution. He would never again have the chance to wield power over the world as he had in his previous life. The first thing I did after rebirth was gather some travel money. Under cover of night, I went to the bamboo grove west of the city and placed it in Liang Jian's hands. He showed his gratitude. Liang Jian and Zhao Lingyi eloped. Watching their hasty retreat, I could almost see the hardships of their future lives. The legitimate son of a prestigious family willingly abandoned his status, forsaking privilege and glory for a wandering physician. The news spread like wildfire, becoming the capital's laughingstock. Childhood sweethearts couldn't compete with a heavenly beauty. This became the jest of tea houses and taverns. And I was that pitiful, abandoned fiancé everyone spoke of. I shed tears on the spot, cementing the rumors. When his father came to my door, his face was utterly dejected. This affair had stripped him of honor. "We have wronged you," he said, with eyes brimming with hurt. I murmured, "It was fate that kept us apart. I hold no blame." Then I turned and walked away with measured steps. Alone, I let a faint smile touch my lips. This lifetime, I would grant him his wish. The story of his connection with Zhao Lingyi was, in itself, a beautiful tale. While traveling through the southern frontier, he was accidentally bitten by a venomous snake and saved by Zhao Lingyi. Posing as a disgraced young noble exiled from his family, he claimed to be unmarried. Naturally, over time, he grew fond of Zhao Lingyi, never mentioning his long-betrothed fiancé. Pressured by his family to marry, he instead brought Zhao Lingyi back with him. He intended to wed her and give her proper status. The Liang family refused to accept a lowly wandering physician into their household. He protested by refusing food, but it proved futile. As my wedding to him drew near, he conceived the idea of eloping. He was willing to abandon everything he possessed now to wander the world with her. In my past life, upon learning this, I followed the Liang family's instructions. When he came to return the betrothal gifts, I took advantage of the moment, got him drunk, and brought him back to the Liang residence. Zhao Lingyi rushed to the bamboo grove, mistakenly believing he had broken his promise. She left in bitter resentment, never to be seen again. From that day on, he drowned his sorrows in wine daily, losing the refined, noble bearing of a young master from a distinguished family. I was so close to spending my life with her. His heart turned to ashes, and he married me as his family wished. After the wedding, his sole focus was his official career, accepting every advantage I and my family offered him. But when he reached the pinnacle of power, he sent men to search every city, crossed the seas to the east, and journeyed far beyond the mountain passes, all to find her. Only then did he reveal his true nature. My years of scheming were for one purpose, to ascend to the highest position, find her, and bring her back. Nothing could stop me. For 7 long years, his obsession never faded. It became a demon within his heart. He imprisoned me in the rear courtyard, feeding me a bowl of medicinal broth each day. Watching my wretched state, he wiped his hands with a handkerchief and said casually, "Fu Qining, when Lingyi returns, you'll have just made room for her." Zhao Lingyi saw me lying on the bed, barely clinging to life. Contempt flashed in her eyes as she tilted her head slightly. "All your efforts for nothing. Do you regret it?" In their earth-shattering love story, I was merely the insignificant first wife. She shouldn't have asked if I regretted it. She should have asked if I resented it, resented this life where fate was not my own. The chancellor of the court, entrusted with the young emperor by the late sovereign, wielded unparalleled power across the realm. After his first wife's untimely death, He searched the land until reuniting with his youthful love, a tale that became legendary. And I was the stumbling block, ruthlessly cast aside. Heaven granted me a second chance at life. This time, I could choose for myself. In my past life, I made a mistake. I shouldn't have stopped him from embracing that lowly destiny. This time, I choose to honor their love and respect their fate. From now on, enduring wind and frost, traveling through snow and storms, these two shall become part of their love story. Without the protection and support of his family, Liang Jian was just an ordinary man. The travel funds I provided, based on his usual spending habits, would barely last him a fortnight. From childhood, he'd lived in luxury, clothed in brocades worth 1,000 gold per bolt, sipping only the most prized Westlake Longjing tea. To avoid drawing attention, he'd taken few possessions from home. Soon, Liang Jian would learn the harsh realities of scrimping and saving, of living with empty pockets. He once told me, "This illustrious lineage and vast fortune mean nothing to me. They cannot compare to the time I spent with Lingy in that small town in the southern frontier." He lived there for only 3 short months. 3 months of ordinary life felt like a novel, different experience to him. But 3 years, or 30 years, of worrying about money? He might not be able to endure that. The Liang family sent no one to search for him. He and Zhao Lingyi traveled together, eventually settling in Lanqing. To make ends meet, Zhao Lingyi went out daily to treat patients. Once, she had held herself with a certain aloof pride, refusing to treat the wealthy. But now, with expenses mounting, she had to set aside her pride. As long as the payment was generous enough, she would accept the case. Liang Jian, too, possessed a certain pride. He could never bring himself to live off Zhao Lingyi's support. Back in the capital, his brushwork had always drawn praise, revered as transcendent art. Yet this proud scion of a distinguished family had resorted to selling his calligraphy and paintings to make ends meet. Now, in the marketplace, his works were scrutinized and criticized without restraint. Once, people would spend a fortune to obtain a single piece of his calligraphy. Now, commoners on the streets declared his paintings weren't even worth 20 coins. Perhaps in this moment, he was also contemplating what remained for him after leaving the Liang family. On Zhao Lingyi's birthday, they had their first argument. It happened when Zhao Lingyi examined the son of a wealthy merchant and won his favor. On her birthday, the wealthy merchant's son sent countless brocades and treasures, even lighting fireworks for 2 straight hours atop the grandest restaurant in Lan City. The entire city witnessed this magnificent spectacle. Truthfully, this scene had played out in her past life too, only it occurred after Zhao Lingyi had left the capital alone. That wealthy young master had stayed by her side, easing her sorrows and taking her to explore mountains and rivers. But now, having successfully eloped with Liang Jian, the wealthy young master had appeared a little earlier than expected. As she gazed at the fireworks, a dazzling smile spread across her face. This very moment was captured by Liang Jian, who had hurried to her side. He confronted Zhao Lingyi. "You once claimed not to care about my status, whether I was a noble scion or a common peddler. You vowed your heart would never waver. Yet now, after so little time, you despise my poverty and inability to offer you a life of luxury? Have you already set your sights on climbing higher?" With that, he hurled the porcelain doll in his hand to the ground, shattering it, and turned to leave. Zhao Lingyi rushed after him, and a heated argument erupted in the small courtyard. No matter how she explained, he refused to believe there was no connection between her and that wealthy young master. He had used money from selling paintings to buy her a porcelain doll as a birthday gift. Yet, in the face of silk robes, jewels, and fireworks filling the sky, it seemed so meager and laughable, wounding his pride. Her accusatory tone only deepened his heartache. She blamed him for leaving early and returning late, for no longer having the patience to accompany her as before. She lamented having no one to confide in when patients treated her harshly during consultations. Yet Liang Jian coldly retorted, "If not for you, how could I have fallen to such depths?" When the news reached me, I burned the letter to ashes after reading it. This letter had come from the Liang household. I knew of Liang Jian's movements before they did. I hosted a small banquet under the moon, surrounded by my closest female friends. The Gu family's daughter, indignant on my behalf, sighed deeply. The Liang heir abandoned his family and forsake his status for a mere physician's daughter. He will surely regret it someday. This turn of events has helped you see his true nature, that he is no worthy man. Letting go early is a blessing in disguise. I nodded in agreement and clinked glasses with her. Truthfully, after he eloped with Zhao Lingyi, the Liang family intended to send guards to bring him back. It was my persuasion that convinced his parents to abandon the search. The more others tried to stop him, the more he sought to prove his love was stronger than gold. Defying convention. Better to let him go. Matters of the heart are as fleeting as clouds and mist. When the passion fades, they simply dissipate. The Liang parents heeded my words and let him live his own life. Now that they've sent this letter to me, it proves I was right. Now, with no one to stand in their way, the two have become a couple bound by resentment. The Liang family is likely already waiting for Liang Jian to return like a prodigal son, kneeling to beg forgiveness. Mrs. Liang herself came to my door, clasping my hand and pleading, "If he ever repents and returns, perhaps you too could rekindle your bond." Facing her earnest gaze, I smiled without a word. What I want is for him to never come back. The day he abandoned his status as the legitimate heir of a distinguished family, I resolved he would never reclaim it easily. I set up a soup kitchen in the eastern part of town, serving porridge daily. The locals all spoke of my kindness. When they learned I'd been abandoned by my fiancé, they felt deeply for me. The scandal of the Liang family's heir eloping with another ran rampant. But my soup kitchen served another purpose. The moment I saw the birthmark on that filthy beggar child's arm, I knew the one I sought had appeared. Her name was Luo Jinyan. She crawled to my feet, tugging at my clothes, begging me to save her mother. I paid handsomely for a doctor to treat her mother and even bought a small courtyard outside to house the mother and daughter. Her mother's illness improved, allowing her to earn a living through embroidery and laundry instead of begging. As for the silver owed for past medical care, I settled every debt for her. She called me a rare benevolent soul in this world. She was mistaken. I only aid those who hold value to me. Perhaps she still doesn't realize she never should have lived this life. Liang Jian occupied the position meant for her. Back then, the Liang family's legitimate son was born, while the main wife remained barren for years. When she finally conceived, she gave birth to a daughter. To make matters worse, the childbirth damaged her body, making future pregnancies unlikely. Desperate, she gambled everything. She swapped her daughter for a commoner's son. All these years, Liang Jian, as the Liang family's sole legitimate heir, has enjoyed unparalleled wealth and privilege. Yet he knows nothing of how he stole another's life. The one who should have been raised in gold and jade was the daughter who was swapped away. Liang Jian was a complete counterfeit, a cuckoo in the nest. In his previous life, he uncovered the truth while investigating a case. Yet he chose to bury it. That woman, Luo Jinyan, died by the sword of an assassin sent by Liang Jian. When Liang's mother learned of this, she chose to cover it up for him, showing not the slightest concern for her own daughter's life. This time, I will help her drive Liang Jian out of the Liang family once and for all. Liang Jian returned sooner than I had imagined. The very first thing he did upon his return was to seek me out. He sent a letter delivered by his men. Outside, a torrential downpour raged. Yet he insisted on waiting beneath the eaves. When I stepped out with my umbrella to meet him, his robes were already drenched by the storm. Gone were the splendid brocades of days past. Today, He wore only a plain-colored long robe, devoid of any adornments. "Why did you give me that money?" His voice was low and measured as he spoke, as if waiting for me to offer an explanation, to give him a way out. I let out a soft laugh. "I'd rather see how long you and she can last without my interference. I'm quite looking forward to that outcome." At my words, his eyes darkened, as if unwilling to speak further. In my past life, he searched the world for her, showered her with unparalleled favor, even poisoning me with his own hands to clear her path. I believed that love could withstand the world's storms, its doubts and suspicions. Little did I know it would crumble so swiftly. His obsession was nothing more than the Zhaolingi he'd once sought but never possessed. Once attained, it proved utterly worthless. I know why he returned to the capital. He witnessed Zhaolingi weeping on the shoulder of that wealthy young master. The outcome proved me wrong. He spoke up, his voice low. "Qining, would you still give me a chance?" He tentatively voiced the question. I replied slowly, "You shouldn't have asked that. When you brought Zhaolingi back, you stripped me of my dignity. Your elopement with her made me a laughingstock. Now that she's broken your heart, you turn to me? Am I so lowly? Merely your second choice?" Panic flickered in his eyes. After a long moment, he stammered, "I know I shouldn't expect you to return so easily. I'll do whatever it takes to satisfy you." He turned and left in the pouring rain. In the days that followed, he came to my door repeatedly. Everyone said he'd reformed, but I refused to see him, feigning illness to send him away. Yet his next action was astonishing. At the foot of Xiangshan Temple, he climbed the 9,900 steps, kneeling at every one to pray for my well-being. Persevering until he reached the summit, he knelt before the Buddha for 3 days, beseeching for my recovery and lasting health. At the Buddha's shrine, he made a vow to unite with me in marriage, to grow old together. My mother told me he was clever. He had personally built the steps leading to him. He knew I was feigning illness to avoid him, and he knew I was consumed by the shame of my past humiliation. So, with this act, he restored my dignity. But I went to see Luo Jinyan. Some things could no longer be put off. Luo Jinyan has always been grateful to me, showing utmost humility whenever we meet. Yet she was meant to be the legitimate daughter of the Liang family, destined for a life of silk robes and fine food, not to be cast out into the streets, forced to worry about her livelihood. I took her hand and gazed at the crescent-shaped birthmark on her arm. She boarded the carriage with me. When it halted outside the Liang residence, we watched from afar as Lady Liang emerged, her carriage resplendent, surrounded by a swarm of maidservants. The words that followed would forever alter her destiny. "Do you know where this is?" She looked at me in confusion, smiling softly. "The Liang family? Such a prosperous and distinguished lineage, enduring for generations without decline. My ancestors held 7 marquis titles. Of course I've heard of them, but someone of my lowly status would never dare approach. This place is your home." She chuckled lightly, thinking I was merely joking. "That elegantly dressed lady you saw earlier is the matriarch of the Liang family, your birth mother. The crescent-shaped birthmark on your arm is proof. The current legitimate heir, Liang Jian, occupies the position meant for you. You were switched at birth. You can verify all this with your present mother." She froze in place, needing time to process such news. I escorted her back to the alley. When she stepped out of the carriage, she seemed dazed, standing outside the house for a long while without entering. Her mind was sharp, yet the closer she got to the truth, the more timid she became. After I returned to the mansion, the Liang family sent over many more gifts. I ordered the maids to record them in a register and store them in the warehouse. One day, they would all be returned. After descending from Xiangshan Temple, He placed a talisman of safety into my hands, saying he had personally sought it out. He knew full well I was merely using an excuse. Yet he didn't expose me. Instead, he used this as an opportunity to play the role of the reformed rogue. Mother, aware of my distaste for him, began arranging meetings with other suitors. Today it was the young general. Tomorrow the son of the grand secretary. Small banquets at home followed one after another, creating quite a bustle. Mother said the Fu family was also a distinguished lineage, no less prestigious than the Liang family. The fuss had produced multiple imperial tutors and chancellors, a noble house whose disciples spanned the land. Their daughters need never suffer his humiliation. Yet at the Lady of Changyuan's flower-viewing banquet, he sidestepped the crowd, cornered me against a wall, and gripped my shoulders threateningly. Fu Qining, haven't I done enough? I've even trampled my pride to offer you an escape. Yet you stubbornly refuse to lower your stance. What exactly do you want from me? Watching his uncharacteristic outburst, I realized his self-control now was less than a tenth of what it had been in my previous life. After only a few days of this charade, he couldn't keep up the act anymore. I wrenched free from his grip, flung his hand away, and replied slowly, "You gave me an exit, does that mean I must take it? When I broke off our engagement and brought Lingyi back, weren't you nearly dying of grief? Didn't you give me travel money just to make me think kindly of you? Now that I've returned, don't push your game of playing hard to get too far. To me, a reformed rogue holds no value." I slowed my speech, letting each word fall deliberately. His gaze faltered, his raised hand froze in midair. He couldn't fathom how my devotion to him could vanish overnight. After a long silence, he maintained his stance and issued a threat. Few families dare to defy the Liang clan. His unspoken meaning was crystal clear to me. As long as he refused to budge, other families wouldn't risk offending the Liang clan to form an alliance with the Fu family. He intended to wear me down. Families that had previously shown interest in a Fu family alliance gradually distanced themselves. I knew he was the one orchestrating it behind the scenes. His desire to salvage this marriage stemmed solely from the immense profit it promised him. With the Liang and Fu families united, they would propel him to the highest echelons of power. To achieve this, he stooped to groveling and humbling himself to beg my return. Yet when I coldly refused, he resorted to threats, truly his style. Just as he gloated over the Liang family's unparalleled influence, the third prince petitioned the emperor for a royal match, publicly requesting my hand before the throne. His Majesty immediately granted the marriage between me and the third prince. I accepted the imperial decree with remarkable calm. A royal match cannot be refused, and I never intended to. Mother, however, led me indoors and spoke at length. True affection is rare among imperial spouses. She cautioned, "Your path ahead will likely be arduous." What path could be more arduous than my last life? Gripping my mother's hand, I replied slowly, "Mother, I do not seek true affection. Human hearts shift. True feelings fade. What use is his affection to me? The destinies of all under heaven have always been manipulated by the supreme ruler. In this life, since I must strive, I shall vie for the highest position." With the wedding date set, I had never seen the third prince before that day. Even in my past life, he remained stationed at the frontier, never crossing our paths. On our wedding night, he lifted my veil and met my gaze. A smile played at his lips, yet his eyes studied me. An innate, commanding presence radiated from him as he spoke plainly of his reasons for marrying me. Because of my family's standing, the Fu clan's disciples spread far and wide, wielding considerable influence among the realm's scholars and commanding widespread respect. He made no secret of his ambition either. He declared that husband and wife were one, and his sights were set on the throne. He solemnly promised that when he ascended to high office, he would grant me supreme honor and make me the empress, setting an example for the realm. I smiled faintly and handed him the cup of wine for the wedding toast. Your Highness will surely achieve your ambitions, I said. My maternal family and I will spare no effort to smooth your path forward. These words felt eerily familiar. In my past life, when Liang Jian needed my family's support, he too had spoken softly, making empty promises. But empty promises were easy to make. He could do it, I could do it. Helping others seize power in my past life was exhausting. Nothing compares to the satisfaction of having others seize power for you. This lifetime, who will use whom? That remains to be seen. During my 3-day post-wedding visit to my maternal home, the third prince personally accompanied me. He spared no effort in showing me the respect and dignity I deserved. My mother asked privately, "How does the third prince treat you?" I replied only, "We treat each other with formal courtesy." On the journey back, he mentioned foreign incursions at the border and how His Majesty might order him to lead troops to suppress them. I stopped him. He could not go on this mission. He didn't understand why I insisted on stopping him, thinking I was just being unreasonable. Should Your Highness insist on going? The Fu family will stand idly by when conflict arises. He seemed annoyed, but after weighing the consequences, he began feigning illness upon returning home. Ultimately, His Majesty dispatched General Huaiqing. It was initially thought merely a barbarian uprising requiring minor suppression. Yet no one anticipated General Huaiqing would perish there. The barbarians wielded poisonous insects, their strange ailments defying cure. When the news reached the third prince, he broke out in a cold sweat in his mansion. He pulled me into his arms, sighing repeatedly that I was his lucky star. With me by his side, he would surely turn misfortune into fortune and find blessings in adversity. From that day onward, he grew ever more trusting and reliant upon me. Zhao Lingyi had returned to seek out Liang Jian, hoping to clear up the misunderstanding. Yet Liang Jian had witnessed Zhao Lingyi weeping on the shoulder of that wealthy young master, and his heart seemed to have grown cold. This time, without waiting for his parents to intervene, he personally ordered Zhao Lingyi to be driven away. When I encountered the two again, it was amidst a scene of them pulling and tugging at each other in the tavern. Zhao Lingyi clutched his sleeve, pleading desperately for him to hear her explanation. His face showed only impatience. Yet the scenes flashing through my mind were all of his deep devotion to her in a past life. The contrast made his current coldness seem almost laughable. Finally, Zhao Lingyi blurted out the shocking truth, "I am carrying your child." 3 months along. Calculating the timing, he had indeed still been in Lan City then. When he saw me, a flicker of embarrassment crossed Liang Jian's eyes. He ordered his men to pull Zhao Lingyi away. I couldn't be bothered with their entanglement. Just as I turned to leave, he lowered his voice and said, "Seeing us come to mutual loathing must bring you satisfaction, I suppose." I arched my eyebrows slightly and replied, "Indeed. Those who betray their word will face retribution. That is indeed satisfying." "You." My words choked him. He was furious. Yet he knew he was in the wrong, so he could say nothing more. Liang Jian brought Zhao Lingyi into the mansion. This time, he did not insist on granting her the status of a legitimate wife. If she were merely a concubine, the Liang family might have chosen to turn a blind eye. At the matriarch's birthday banquet, a woman appeared bearing a token of recognition. Accompanied by her foster mother, she declared herself the Liang family's legitimate child, swapped maliciously at birth, and demanded a blood recognition test. The eldest wife of the Liang family paled, her gaze darting nervously. The matriarch had harbored resentment toward her for years, and the private discord between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law had now erupted into scandal at such a crucial occasion as the birthday banquet, utterly disgracing her. The second wife of the Liang household, relishing the drama, poured fuel on the fire. She insisted that the legitimate bloodline determined family inheritance and that there could be no confusion about lineage. The matter must be thoroughly investigated. Luo Jinyan bore an uncanny resemblance to Lord Liang. From the moment everyone caught sight of her features, whispers erupted. Even Lord Liang himself seemed to waver. The third prince and I remained seated at the guest table, sipping tea. We did not approach to meddle in the matter and excused ourselves at the appropriate moment. As we were about to mount the carriage, the third prince remarked with evident amusement, "Qinning truly is destined for nobility. Had the marriage to the Liang family gone through, you'd be the one in this predicament now." Yet that Liang Jian took a fancy to a wandering physician, how perfectly matched they seem. The third prince was clearly in high spirits. Overnight, the news spread throughout the capital. The matriarch of the Liang family personally admitted that years ago, in her quest for a male heir, she had swapped her biological daughter with the son of a commoner. Thus, the true heiress was cast into the world, enduring hardship and suffering, while the impostor lived a life of luxury and privilege for half a lifetime. The Liang matriarch was sent to an ancient temple to live as a nun, shaving her head and dedicating herself to contemplation for the rest of her days, never to return. Divorce was exceedingly difficult for a prominent family, entangled as they were in intricate marital ties. This was the most dignified outcome she could hope for. Liang Jian was also expelled from the Liang household. The matriarch and the family head had initially felt reluctant, but his position within the Liang family had become too awkward. Holding the title of legitimate son, he was simply intolerable to the others. The day he stepped out of the Liang residence, Luo Jinyan was welcomed back into the family, restored to her rightful place. A life out of place, now returning to its proper position. In her previous life, Luo Jinyan remained ignorant of her true origins until her death, never knowing why she had been targeted for murder. His Majesty was advancing in years, and the ambitions of the third prince were gradually coming to light. He treated me ever more kindly. When I gazed at my reflection, he stood behind me, took the comb from my hand, and personally brushed my long hair. Now that His Majesty intends to designate an heir, I hope my father-in-law can lend me his support in court. Upon hearing this, I understood his meaning. Your Highness may rest assured, your wish shall be fulfilled in due time. With such a promise from me, he was naturally overjoyed. Over the years, he had gained some prestige in the military, but among the civil officials, his reputation was poor. To ascend to the position of crown prince, he must first gain the approval of the civil officials. He received the answer he desired. When Liang Jian once sought a smooth path in his official career, his behavior was identical to Prince Liang's now. Having seen it all before, I knew exactly what he desired and what words he craved to hear. Soon, the political winds shifted abruptly within the court, with the civil officials unanimously championing the third prince as crown prince. Even those who had once looked down upon him now praised his distinguished military achievements and noble character. With His Majesty's eldest son having died young and his second son lost to debauchery, the third prince stood as the most suitable choice. With this collective backing, the third prince ascended to the position of crown prince. On the day of his investiture, I stood beside him, dressed in splendid court attire. He took my hand, smiling with hidden meaning. "The road ahead is perilous," he said. "You must walk it with me." Meeting his gaze, I offered a faint smile. Of course. That day, I entered the Eastern Palace with him. Everyone said I was blessed. The crown prince cherished me deeply, and when they recalled Liang Jian's broken promise and reneging on our betrothal, they dismissed it as mere laughter. Soon, I became pregnant. The crown prince was overjoyed. He expressed his hope that I would bear him a son. If this child were a boy, he would be the emperor's eldest grandson, holding a special place in his heart. I smiled and replied, "That depends on whether heaven grants its favor." Yet he hurried away, heading straight to Jing'an Temple to pray for blessings, to beseech the heavens to ensure this child would be male. Let him tend to his own concerns. What I truly desire is a daughter. A daughter who inherits everything from me. That is the legacy I wish to see. If the eldest imperial grandson were born, it would undoubtedly solidify his position as heir apparent. I understood the deep-seated unease within him. After all, His Majesty favored his youngest son, cherishing the 9th prince above all others. In my previous life, it was this 9th prince who ascended the throne. Before His Majesty passed, he entrusted the young prince to Liang Jian and the other ministers, commanding them to assist him wholeheartedly. Yet the 3rd prince never even lived to become crown prince. He perished in that foreign rebellion. But I want a daughter. The daughter they look down upon is the treasure in my heart. I heard that after Liang Jian was expelled from the Liang family, he lived a life of hardship and ruin. Life was harsh, and constant quarrels between the two led to him accidentally pushing Zhao Lingyi. She lost the child. Her heart grew cold, and she vanished without a trace. From that day onward, their fate held no connection to mine. Life and death, fortune and misfortune, poverty and wealth, all were their own destiny. My sights were set on the highest pinnacle. Ever since I became pregnant, some have advised me to select more beauties for the crown prince. I once mentioned this to him, but he flatly refused. He said, "You endure hardship in your pregnancy. As your husband, I cannot share your burden, but I should be by your side more. There is no need to choose more beauties, I have no need for their service." His words deeply moved the palace maids around me. Regardless of royal custom, even in ordinary wealthy households, a pregnant mistress would typically have concubines prepared. His words made him seem like a rare gem of a husband in this world, holding such a high position, yet capable of such consideration for his wife. The maids cast envious glances his way, immediately showering him with flattery about his good fortune. My gaze sharpened slightly as I looked at the crown prince thoughtfully, then smiled softly. Indeed, to have met such a good man as your highness is truly my blessing. Such words pleased him greatly, and he played the role of the considerate husband even more convincingly before everyone. The noble ladies of the capital still whispered among themselves, saying that marrying a man like the crown prince would make one's life worthwhile. Hearing these words, I merely shook my head and smiled. To believe in the affection of royalty would be the height of foolishness. Thus, when I stumbled upon him meeting secretly with Yuhan Yan during the mid-autumn banquet, not a ripple stirred in my heart. Hidden behind the rockery, I watched with detached calm as he embraced Yuhan Yan. Their hearts laid bare. His voice was soft and soothing as he reassured her, "Our great cause remains unfinished. I still need her and her family's backing. The better I treat her, the more wholeheartedly her family will support me. When the time comes, I will give you your rightful place. You will stand by my side openly and with honor." Yuhan Yan nestled against his chest, her voice trembling with a hint of choking sobs. "But what if the crown princess refuses?" The crown prince's tone turned icy. "Then she will have no choice in the matter." I had watched the grand spectacle unfold. Only after the two of them had departed did I slowly emerge from behind the rockery. When the birds are gone, the fine bough is put away, so it has always been since ancient times. Only who would be the bird and who the bough remained to be seen. The crown prince always carried himself with excessive arrogance. Upon returning to the eastern palace, I found him frantically searching for me. That look of concern, truly flawless. I frowned slightly. Where had His Highness picked up this lotus fragrance? It smelled like a woman's powder. A flicker of panic crossed his brow before he swiftly concealed it. He must have passed by the hibiscus garden in the Imperial Park earlier. Hence the scent. I smiled, choosing not to press further. After 10 months of pregnancy, the time of delivery arrived. He paced restlessly outside the room, muttering, "Heaven grant it be a boy." Yet the pain sharpened my awareness, making me remember every word he spoke. In the end, a daughter was born, just as I had wished. But his face betrayed such profound disappointment. He held her only briefly before hastily handing her to the wet nurse. He told me to rest well, promising to visit later. The maid beside me seemed to notice his attitude too, her lips twitching as if she wanted to speak but held back. The old wet nurses gossiped privately, daughters are worthless, they'll never be as precious as sons. When a secondary consort arrives and gives birth to a son first, she'll rise in status through her child. Then, the crown princess might just find herself in tears. I happened to witness it and ordered 20 strokes of the cane for each. Watching them writhe in agony, I remarked indifferently, "My daughter shall be of incalculable worth." From that day on, no one in the Eastern Palace dared speak of it again. The old emperor fell gravely ill, and with the crown prince overseeing state affairs, the burden upon his shoulders grew heavier. Those with designs on power sought to stir up trouble during this period. On New Year's Eve, the old emperor did not appear. All the festive celebrations were presided over by the crown prince. He was consumed by countless trivial matters, returning each time utterly exhausted. Yet at such a moment, I felt it was my duty to remind him, "Your Highness, your brothers are stirring restlessly. Why not set a trap to catch them like turtles in a jar?" As my words fell, he seemed to snap awake. The court was now in a season of turmoil, yet many troubles were deliberately stirred up by his brothers. Their aim was to overwhelm him with exhausting responsibilities, leaving him exhausted and preoccupied while they seized the chaos to rise in rebellion. 10 days later, the palace urgently summoned imperial physicians to keep vigil at His Majesty's bedside through the night. This undoubtedly signaled to the outside world the emperor was failing. The Eastern Palace, too, was infiltrated with many pawns. Once indulged, they now served a purpose. The more intelligence they relayed to their masters, the greater their value. That night, the fifth prince rebelled, leading his troops to storm the imperial city. He breached the gates and advanced like a whirlwind. Yet the moment he entered the palace lanes, the city's 4 gates slammed shut. Countless imperial guards lined the walls, unleashing a hail of arrows, killing without mercy. The crown prince took my hand, saying nothing, yet I saw the turmoil in his eyes. His gaze held ambition and delight, the satisfaction of vanquishing rivals and nearing his grand ambition. His position as heir apparent was now secure. The other princes were too young and inexperienced to challenge him. He had played the dutiful son to perfection before His Majesty. The moment His Majesty heard of the fifth prince's rebellion, he vomited blood and collapsed unconscious. The crown prince remained by His Majesty's bedside, personally administering medicine until the emperor drew his final breath. He ascended the throne in accordance with the imperial will. I too entered the inner palace, becoming empress, while my daughter was granted the title Princess Minghua. He declared he would heed his minister's counsel and hold a grand selection of consorts. I felt no jealousy. Instead, responding magnanimously, His Majesty does indeed require attendance. Expanding the harem and fostering descendants is only proper. Finding no fault in my words, he seemed somewhat surprised. He selected beauties, appointing 4 consorts, and above them, 1 noble consort. That noble consort was none other than an old acquaintance, the very woman I had glimpsed behind the rockery all those years ago. Yu Han, daughter of a censor, possessed a background unworthy of the imperial consort title. Yet the emperor favored her, and thus her elevation followed his will. After receiving her title, she came to pay her respects, presenting an air of delicate, willow-like grace. But when alone, her words cut like a dagger. For years, the world had spoken of the deep affection between His Majesty and the empress. Yet, on that day, the emperor remarked that his closest companion, his wife, possessed cunning and scheming surpassing any man. On the path to sovereignty, she had personally stained her hands with bloodshed. Such hardness of heart made even his own consort send a chill down his spine. Her eyes flashed with defiance. Most women would be hurt to hear such words from the husband they had personally elevated. But not me. His words cannot wound me in the slightest. If he knew my true intentions, he would feel far more than mere dread. Yu Hanyan spoke thus, part provocation, part sowing discord. Yet I finished my tea without flinching. Her disappointment froze the curve of her lips. After she left, I made no effort to confront the emperor. It was as if I had never heard those words. Now that the empire was secured, the emperor felt no restraint. After that, he spent entire nights in the consort's palace, caressing her cheek and ear, even exempting her from court greetings, publicly humiliating me. He undertook grand construction projects for her, building the star-gathering tower, drinking and reveling with her. The world assumed I, the neglected first wife, must be seething with resentment. But how could I resent him? I only wish he would go even further. The more outrageously he behaves, the more that supreme power will gradually shift into my hands. Immersed in the tender embrace of his beloved, he grows lax in his duties. The memorials he refuses to handle are all sent to the Phoenix Grace Palace. At first, he merely intended to test me. Yet the memorials processed through my hands not only contained not a single error but were praised by the ministers, extolling his wisdom. Born into a distinguished family, I once aided Liang Jian in ascending to the position of chancellor and later helped the third prince seize the throne. The art of imperial governance is no stranger to me. If given this position, I would govern far better than he. The harem grew ever more crowded with beauties. The soft embrace of women most easily erodes a hero's resolve. He always seemed weary and listless, increasingly unwilling to handle affairs. Consort Yu was with child. She had always been frail. Conceiving a child was no easy feat. He cherished this child deeply and made her a solemn promise. Consort Yu had once been arrogant in my presence, repeating his exact words. The empress had only one daughter. If the consort gave birth to a son, he would be crowned crown prince. This was the emperor's private promise to her. She desperately wanted to see panic in my eyes, but I merely smiled and congratulated her. Her Majesty the Empress now feigned composure, though I suspect she seethed with hatred within. Now, years later, I needn't fear telling you, His Majesty and I shared mutual affection long ago. He married you only for the throne. Her hand rested on her belly, her face a mask of smiles. If you could take my place now, would you need to waste words on me? My eyes narrowed slightly, catching her momentary flicker of distress. This remark had struck her deepest wound. A mere clown, nothing more. After that, she seldom visited Fengyi Palace. She finally understood the futility of sparring with me in words. Each time she provoked or taunted me, she received only my indifference. Yu Hanyan did indeed bear a prince, the emperor's first son. Yet her years of frail health led to life-threatening hemorrhaging during childbirth. The imperial physicians fought desperately to save her, but her body was too depleted. She did not survive the month. The emperor was overcome with grief, suspending court for many days. He sat despondently in her chambers each day, clutching her old garments, the palace doors tightly shut, refusing to see anyone. Even ministers with urgent state affairs could only come to me for guidance. He issued an edict naming her infant son as crown prince, a mere babe in swaddling clothes, hastily elevated to the position. Yet the imperial physicians warned that Yu Hanyan's difficult labor had left the crown prince frail from birth. They feared he might not survive past 10 years. These words they dared not utter to His Majesty. Since the physicians held their tongues, His Majesty need not know. Let him believe his crown prince is a child of robust health. He would not listen to his minister's counsel. He insisted on posthumously honoring her as empress. What he couldn't give her in life, he now insisted on bestowing posthumously. The harem buzzed with whispers. Yet I did not oppose him. Instead, I helped quell the rumors. recognizing my measured approach to affairs. He entrusted me with increasingly important matters. He remained utterly consumed by grief over the imperial consort's passing, drinking incessantly without restraint until he was often dead drunk. With many duties and little sustenance, his appetite dwindled significantly. Before long, he developed a headache. At first, it was a mild ache, but it soon became excruciating. The imperial physician examined him and merely stated it was wind cold entering his body, requiring careful recuperation. I noticed the physician's hesitant expression, but did not press him. Instead, I summoned him privately. Doctor Who, His Majesty dislikes discussing his ailments. If you face any difficulties, you may confide in me privately. Do not provoke His Majesty's irritation or anger. Doctor Who visibly relaxed at these words. He explained that the condition could be minor or severe. With careful recuperation, it might remain a minor ailment. But if His Majesty continued to indulge himself and neglect his health, it could develop into a serious headache. Wind ailments are stubborn and incurable. The ancient divine physicians spoke of trepanation, but no one dares attempt it. His Majesty detests being restrained. How could he possibly rest properly? As the understanding and virtuous consort in his eyes, I naturally must comply with his wishes. Whether he revels night after night or pines for her through mementos, I will never go against his will. When the imperial physician prescribed the life-sustaining wind-dispelling decoction, he refused to drink it, and I let him be. He became obsessed with the alchemy of golden elixirs, seeking out every sorcerer to persuade him to consume them, claiming he could see the late empress consort's image in his dreams. I never stopped him. In just a year, his symptoms worsened, manifesting as numbness and weakness in his limbs, and blurred vision. He gradually lost the strength to attend to court affairs. Even slightly longer periods reviewing memorials caused dizziness, blurred vision, and paralysis in his right hand, rendering him unable to hold a brush. Only when he lifted his teacup and found his hand trembling uncontrollably did he grasp the gravity of his condition. But by then, it was too late. The herbal remedies prescribed by the imperial physicians held little effect on him. He could barely manage to attend court each day. And after the court session, he had no energy left to handle state affairs. All of this, he could only entrust to me. Besides me, he had no one he could trust. His brothers were the ones he distrusted most. His children were still too young. I, however, was his wife since before the wedding, having walked beside him through the bloody storms of power struggles. Together we had faced open and hidden threats, shared sleepless nights pondering the path ahead. He could trust only me. He feared the imperial authority slipping from his grasp, and dreaded powerful ministers rising above it. Now, I alone can stabilize the court and intimidate the aristocratic clans for him. During his convalescence, all matters great and small in the court were decided by me. Power is what I pursue, and it was my purpose in marrying him. He believes himself the victor, having used me and the Fu family to ascend the throne. Little does he know, he is merely a stepping stone on my path to the imperial throne. Rather than prop up his lofty ambitions, I would seize the throne myself. In the depths of winter, as snow swirled outside, I ordered servants to quietly open the windows in the dead of night, knowing his frail body dreaded the cold. This finally broke him. As he lay dying, his lips still murmured the name, Han Yen. In a final moment of lucidity, he commanded the throne be passed to the crown prince. The young emperor ascended the throne, and I became Empress Dowager, ruling from behind the curtain. After years of striving, I had finally reached this position. Yet, it was still not enough. The new emperor was still a child, frail and weak. Seated in the court, he dared not speak. Whenever ministers presented petitions, his gaze would turn to me. He was utterly incapable of handling such occasions. The imperial physician took his pulse daily, his eyes growing heavier with worry each day. Privately, he told me the new emperor might not live beyond 5 years. 5 years, enough time for me to plan. He is my puppet. As long as he remains, the legitimacy and stability of the realm endure. I will use these 5 years to seize absolute control over the entire dynasty. Then, even when he is gone, the empire shall not fall into chaos. To this end, I have promoted scholars from humble backgrounds, selecting talent without regard to lineage, shattering the entrenched dominance of the aristocratic clans. The old and new factions now check each other, while imperial relatives have been exiled to remote frontiers. I established the Mirror Bureau to oversee all officials, encouraging mutual denunciation. I have made all necessary preparations. My daughter once asked me, "Mother, if I were a son, could I have eased your burdens?" The palace attendants whisper behind my back that father never favored me. When I was born, he had hoped for a son. My arrival disappointed him. Because of this, he neglected you, passed the crown prince title and the throne to consort Yu's son, posthumously honored her as empress, and reduced you to a laughingstock throughout the court and the realm. I stroked her cheek and smiled, but I wanted a daughter like Minghua. My daughter will be my lifelong pride. I invited the greatest scholars of our age to teach her learning, asked the grand tutor to instruct her in the ways of ruling, and I myself would personally teach her the art of imperial governance. My expectations for her have always been different from those of others. Her gaze was unwavering as she looked at me. "Mother, I will do better than any of those men. Your Majesty believes in you." At these words, a radiant smile blossomed across her face. When the young emperor passed away, he was only 9 years old. I ascended the throne with an iron fist. My claim lacked legitimacy, so this path required paving it with mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Such is the nature of imperial power and conquest. I am no saint, and I will not retreat now. In the eyes of the world, I could have adopted an heir from the imperial clan, ruled from behind the curtain, and still held real power as the true ruler behind the scenes. Just a little longer, and I could have stayed with her forever. But I insist on sitting upright and proud upon the imperial throne. A century hence, when historians meticulously record our era, my name shall stand alongside those of emperors throughout the ages. I wish posterity to remember me as empress, not as crown prince's consort, empress, or dowager empress. On the day of my coronation, Minghua gazed up at the 12-lobed crown upon my head and murmured softly, "Mother looks truly majestic wearing it. One day, it will rest upon Minghua's own head." I longed for a daughter that day, for she would naturally inherit everything I possess. The path of an empress was never meant to be a single generation's achievement, nor would I allow it to end with mine. Though heaven and earth may shift, and the cosmos turn upside down, I still meet an old acquaintance. Everyone said Liang Jian had gone mad. Ragged and tattered, he climbed the city ramparts and stood there, shouting, "I held the office of chancellor," wielding power that shook the world. The late emperor entrusted me with his young heir, bestowing upon me a weighty responsibility. I supported the infant emperor, my achievements overshadowing the heavens, my name to be remembered for all eternity. His voice was cold, stern, and resolute, echoing from the summit of the city walls. Below, crowds gathered, pointing and whispering. He saw me, then gave a sorrowful smile and spoke one sentence. He said, "I remember now." He recalled everything from his past life. After that, he leapt from the ramparts. As he fell, his face bore a look of release, as if he had truly found liberation. The people below watched his body fall. Those who knew him sighed, the pride of heaven in his first half-life, reduced to the streets in the second. He surely couldn't bear the crushing fall and blow, that's why he went mad. But his memories held far more than that. The high rank and power of his past life seemed like a fleeting dream. The more one possessed in dreams, the more despairing reality became. In the past life, he was the one wielding power over the realm, supporting the young emperor. In this life, I am the one reigning supreme, holding absolute authority. The year Minghua came of age, she entered the Eastern Palace. Already possessing the dignified bearing of a crown prince, she declared with unwavering resolve, I will help Mother safeguard this legacy, ensuring its prosperity for generations to come. The end.